We all love our famous Italian plumber icon of Nintendo, correct? Mario saves Princess Peach multiple times from Bowser and has a closely identical brother named Luigi. He is from a rated E game series and all, but the truth will have you shiver that Nintendo could come up with ideas based on eerie horrific experiences that happened to a victim back in the 1970s. Let's start from the beginning. July 12, 1974 in Cherkasy, Ukraine, a 23-year-old white woman was looking for a job. Her name was Pavla Florence and she had blonde wavy hair, blue eyes, 2 freckles on her left cheek, and skinny. She often dated men just for their money, yet she had the body of a model. Pavla never intended on going to college after graduation because the only hobby she loved was painting. She lived with her friend after graduation, but then was forced to be kicked out to support herself, since all she did from age 18-23 was drink, smoke, socialize, and paint. Pavla traveled around Ukraine for a job, and when she arrived at Kharkiv she finally found a job. Her job involved painting for a company. In October 4, 1974 a 25-year-old Italian migrant man named Mario Ciro Lombardi worked with Pavla in the company. Mario developed feelings for Pavla as they worked on a project for an advertisement poster, but no one knew how Pavla felt. Pavla was a little flirty to most men she met, so it is hard to tell if she liked Mario. As they spent times together working, all they developed together was just friendship, since Mario had trouble dating women. Pavla could have had interest for another man during the time. Pavla usually rode public transportation, bus, trains, before and after work because she did not make enough money to afford a car. She lived in an apartment 14 minutes away from work. Around February 8, Pavla was waiting for the bus around 10 p.m. She attended a late-night meeting, but then a normal-looking man convinced her that the bus schedule changed and guided her to his car. Stalking yet thankfully, Lombardi observed what was going on because he usually follows Pavla after work to see where she goes, in case he wants to coincidentally meet up with her and talk to her more. The man took Pavla to his car. She denied his request to go into his car because the man was acting a little creepy. Lombardi did not do anything in the situation because he thought it was some typical husband-wife argument. The man grabbed Pavla's arm, then she tried to hit the man with her umbrella using the other hand while screaming for help. Her umbrella swings hit the man twice on the head, which aggravated him. Pavla was then unexpectedly whacked multiple times on the head with a stick in an attempt to make her unconscious. Lombardi watched in horror as the man stuffed her into the car. Since it was easier to hijack a car in those times, Lombardi tried to think of a fast solution, so he had no other choice but to steal the nearest automobile, without the man seeing him, and drive after the man. Lombardi did not have a phone to call the police, nor any quick emergency techniques, especially since he recently moved into Ukraine. The man was driving for 49 minutes until he reached a house in the middle of a large forest nearby the Seversky Donets River. Surprisingly, Lombardi attempted to catch up to him. The man grabbed Pavla's unconscious body and ran towards his door as soon as he spotted Lombardi driving into his driveway. Lombardi went in front of his doorstep and kept screaming questions. He was too scared to enter the dim house. The man's house had multiple candles lit inside the house. Light bulbs couldn't function properly in that setting. The guy resisted to respond to anything Lombardi asked, so Lombardi had no other choice but to run into his house. Lombardi ran into the house, only to be held at a gunpoint. The man threatened that if Lombardi does not enter the animal cage inside the kitchen, he would shoot him. Lombardi went inside the cage and then the man locked him up. The man grabbed the cage and pushed it downstairs into the basement. Lombardi almost injured his left shoulder and spine, but his elbow was bleeding. The basement was the only room in the house with only one candle lit because the man secretly kept a wild, undomesticated chimpanzee in his basement. The animal was identified as a 14-15-year-old common chimpanzee, Pan troglodytes. Lombardi's crash onto the basement floor frightened the chimpanzee, which caused it scream. The chimpanzee's scream woke up Pavla, and when she woke up, her wrists and ankles were tied onto the floor of the man's bedroom. The man shut the basement door so that the chimpanzee's screams can be muted, while Pavlo was screaming and crying in fear. Lombardi's cage was not locked up anymore because the crash screwed up the lock on the cage door, so he got out, but then was partly mauled on the legs when the chimpanzee attacked him. The dim candle made it extremely hard to see where Lombardi was going and extremely scary, but he kept trying to find an object to kill the chimpanzee with. He was crawling because his legs were mauled. Lombardi found a small Fat Max Company hammer, then swung it multiple times at the chimpanzee until all of its blood squirted out. After that, Lombardi quietly cried in fear because he didn't want the man to hear anything from him. Lombardi's legs were completely mauled, so he could not walk at all. All he could do is hear the events that happened upstairs. Pavlo was threatened to get tortured in numerous ways if she did not remain in silence. So she stayed quiet, yet with the look of traumatized fear on her face. In her form of bondage, she was raped. The psychopathic man had a fetish in which arousal occurs from the idea of eating another person by an animal, known as vorophilia. He did not rely on cannibalism, but he had reptiles in storage. The reptiles he had were mostly from the Ukraine region, but he had one small Central American caiman, most likely imported. The man went downstairs to the kitchen to get the stored reptiles. Lombardi heard his footsteps, so he crawled back into his cage immediately. The man opened the basement door and laughed as he walked away into the kitchen. Surprisingly, he did not realize the absence of the chimpanzee. He did not see the chimpanzee's carcass because the basement was too dark, the candle was wearing out. Moments later, the man walked back to his bedroom. Lombardi grabbed the hammer and crawled upstairs slowly. Pavlo saw the container of reptiles, and cried asking questions. The man told her it was nothing. The man grabbed her left arm and carved off 4 inches of skin. She screamed. The man grabbed a small hungry snake and made it consume the meat off her left arm. She was then raped again, and the man was even more driven to do more. The man carved off several more skin from her left arm and continued the rape. The man wanted Pavlo to stop screaming, so he grabbed one of his dead turtles and stuffed it inside her mouth. Pavlo was puking while the man forcefully kept the turtle inside her mouth. Her puke was mixed with her saliva and the turtle's blood, which dripped constantly on the sides of her mouth, which attracted other reptiles, insects. The psychopathic man did numerous unusual activities on Pavlo, while Lombardi was crawling towards the bedroom. The man disemboweled Pavlo, she was still a little conscious, and then the man made his caiman eat Pavlo's organs. When Lombardi finally made it to the man's room, he pegged the hammer at the man's cranium, yet the reptiles that were eating Pavlo's body were in Lombardi's way towards the injured man. The caiman was walking towards Lombardi until Lombardi quickly stabbed the caiman on the back with a sharp object, resulting in its death. The other reptiles were not to worry because they were scavengers, animals that only eat dead animals. Lombardi grabbed another object nearby and kept whacking the injured man's body until he was dead. Lombardi then grabbed the hammer and smashed the man's head with all the leftover anger and hatred he had. Lombardi pukes and sobs as he looked at Pavlo's body, all but leftover meat and skin. Lombardi crawls downstairs and leaves the house immediately. Lombardi could not function his legs properly for driving, but with what he had left over he tried to see how far he could get. Lombardi drove 1-2 miles onto the road and just stopped and gave up. He wanted his life to end at this point, but he just sat in the car crying. 6 hours later, a man named Delbert met Lombardi on the road and immediately took him to a police station and then was hospitalized. The Ukraine police reported to the forest, and after 3-4 hours of searching, they finally found the crime scene. They were utterly disgusted. They found 5 small snakes and hundreds of insects, spiders, ants, flies, maggots, consuming Pavlo's remains. They also reported a dead South American imported caiman, another dead human, and a dead West African chimpanzee. The vorophiliac man was identified as 31-year-old Devin Boyer, a college dropout of Kiev Polytechnic Institute. The animals were illegally imported, and Pavlo Florence and Devin Boyer were officially declared dead on the next day. 1 week later, Lombardi was taken out of the hospital and quit his job. Lombardi soon lived with his older brother, Luigi Spartacco Lombardi, back at San Marino, Italy. March 12, 1975. A funeral was held nearby Kharkiv for Pavla Florence. Mario and Luigi came to the funeral then left without much said. Mario was in deep depression and fear after the funeral, and Luigi constantly came to Mario for help. Mario did not like drinking, so he usually took hits of acid to make him stay out of reality once in a while. In Mario's hallucinations, he would usually picture himself as a hero trying to save Pavla from some evil man trying to destroy all of Ukraine with evil forces of reptiles. It was also a constant nightmare for Mario. He lived in never-ending fear of picturing Pavla's last moments before her tragedy. Torture, rape, fear, violence, eaten alive, basically the worst things that can happen to someone in Mario's opinion, and he was a witness of all of that. 1 year later, Luigi was running short on money for supporting Mario, so he told Mario that he needed a job, but Mario was still upset. Luigi worked as a plumber for more than 6 years, and he knew all Mario liked to do was paint and exercise. Luigi thought that if Mario got the same job with his brother, it would be fun because they get to stay together more often. Mario was later convinced and soon became a plumber after short training. Mario still took minor hits of acid during the time though. On June 17, 1979, the newspaper about the tragedy of Pavla Florence spread across Europe and Asia and was read by a man who was going to work for Nintendo. The time of video gaming was about to occur and the man wanted to think of really good ideas for a profitable game with a good technique. Before the newspapers were published, Mario Ciro Lombardi was interviewed twice and some workers for Nintendo watched the translated version of Lombardi's interview. They were amazed on Mario's story and wanted to use his permission to make a video game partially based off him and his story. Mario said it was okay and Luigi agreed as well. They wanted to create an antagonist for the video game, but Mario did not want them to use Devon Boyer because it will remind him and others in Ukraine of the psychopathic murderer, so they based off the giant monkey from King Kong and the chimpanzee pet of the vorophiliac man into one regular-sized gorilla named Donkey Kong. It was called Donkey because the man who designed Donkey Kong thought donkey meant stupid in English, and also Mario Ciro Lombardi told Nintendo that he wants the monkey to be called stupid because of what the chimpanzee did to Lombardi's legs. In Nintendo's best-seller arcade game Donkey Kong in 1981, the protagonist Carpenter Heroic Man is supposed to represent Mario Ciro Lombardi, fictional character only referred to as Mario. The antagonist Gorilla is supposed to represent the chimpanzee, fictional character referred to as Donkey Kong. The damsel in distress is not necessarily supposed to represent the actual Pavla Florence, but someone else with the same characteristics. No one wants to be reminded of Pavla's tragedy. Mario showed a minorly happy reaction to the game, but Luigi was excited that Nintendo made a game based off his own brother. Luigi was inspired to be a secondary character in the 1983 arcade game Mario Bros. Sadly, Mario died from overdose of acid in 1983. Luigi didn't stop working as a plumber because he was Catholic and he believed that Mario is happier dead than alive. Luigi Spartacco Lombardi was interviewed in January 9, 1984, and a Nintendo worker wanted to use Luigi to give ideas on the next Mario game. Luigi's story to the Nintendo worker about Mario's imagination and reality was leading into a creative game idea. 1985's famous platform video game Super Mario Bros. Was released. Donkey Kong was replaced with a more deadly-looking enemy, Bowser. Bowser was based off the vorophiliac and the turtle and Pavla's mouth mixed together. How? The murderer's name was Devon Boyer. The Nintendo worker grabbed Boyer's last name and minorly changed it into Bowser. Yet the worker has to keep Mario's word of not using a human character based off the actual murderer, so they decided to use the turtle as the sign of evil in the story. They gave the turtle a huge size, spikes, and anthropomorphic traits. They also decided to finally base off Pavla Florence into a damsel in distress female character, known as Peach. They wanted to maintain their connection with 5 letters and one name that starts with a P. Nintendo finally reunites Mario and Luigi into its sequel as plumbers to save Princess Peach from the evil Bowser. The Mushroom Kingdom and most of the plot of the story were all based from Mario's hallucinations from acid. Especially the mushroom parts, because he took shrooms, which made him constantly think about shrooms and the experience he had in Devin Bowyer's house, which then made Mario think about the whole story in a different setting with different elements. The turtles, Koopa Troopas, were supposed to represent the reptiles that Devin Bowyer held captive. The bullet bills were supposed to represent the flashback of the time when Mario was held at gunpoint. That was a moment that he would never forget, therefore having nightmares of it and even coming up with bullets with personification. Peach's umbrella was based off her self-defense move against Devin before she got stuffed into the car. King K. Rool was based off the Cayman. Luigi Spartaco Lombardi died in May 14, 1988 from a car accident. As time went on, Nintendo used more of Mario and Luigi's interviews into making ideas for further games. For example, Yoshi was a figment of Mario Lombardi's imagination as a transportation buddy. Daisy was Nintendo's own creation by thinking that Luigi should have a girlfriend in the series. Delfino Plaza was brought up by the man who helped Mario Lombardi make it to the hospital, Delbert. Nintendo thought that Delbert deserved to be based off into the Super Mario series by having part of his name Del convert into a happy resort called Delfino Plaza. There you have it, the truth behind Super Mario.